Good morning and welcome. I'm Jim Blanton, Director of the Louisville Free Public Library, and I'm so excited to welcome everyone here for today's announcement. The library's mission is to provide the community with access to knowledge and information at all stages of learning, and one of the most important fundamental stages of learning is early childhood. Instilling a passion and love of reading and learning at an early age is what the library is all about. That is why I'm so thrilled that the National Center for Families Learning chose the Main Library's Children's Department to host this morning's press conference. To start things off, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of our community's biggest library champions, Mayor Greg Fischer.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today, and I want to thank Jim Blanton. Jim's done a great job with our libraries. We really appreciate you. Well, our city's going through a real growth phase now. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've got a great renewal taking place in our city with the number of jobs that have been produced and the type of capital investment that you see taking place all over in our city. So that's great. But what we're determined to do is to make sure that everybody feels prosperity in every neighborhood and at every age. And that was one of the reasons that led to the original establishing of our Cradle to Career system of lifelong learning. I want to recognize Marlin Cole, who's back in the room here. Marlin is our first executive director of Cradle to Career and Louisville Promise, just started a couple weeks ago. And so everybody will be learning more about that in the coming months. But basically what Cradle to Career is all about is surrounding each one of our kids with the supports they need, whether it's physical health, mental health, social and emotional learning, nutrition, and wellness, so that we can close the achievement gap that we see from kids that have advantage and privilege versus kids that maybe come from under-resourced environments. So how can we make sure that each and every one of our child has those type of resources? And then at the end of the Cradle to Career, at the end of high school, is a Promise Scholarship, so that a student can get a great start on a post-secondary degree. We know the number one correlator between getting out of poverty is a post-secondary degree, 2-year, 4-year, some type of certificate. Data shows us time and time again. So the critical issue is for us as a city, everybody, to come together to support each and every one of our kids. Now, how do we start at the beginning phase? We know the data shows us that some of our least resourced kids are showing up 3 years behind their advantaged peers at the age of 6. How do you catch up when you're 3 years behind at the age of 6? A few of the kids have got the grit and something happens with them where they can do it, but it's way too many. And this is not sustainable for us as a city from a moral standpoint, from an economic development standpoint, or from a public safety standpoint as well. So we need all hands on deck to surround our kids, every kid in every neighborhood, so that they have the tools to succeed. So it's a big challenge. So how do you break it down into little pieces so that we can solve this challenge one piece at a time? One factor is that research shows a strong connection between hearing words and brain development in early childhood. We know by the age of 3, children who are born into challenged situations, which can oftentimes be low income, but it can also be other environments. But these children have heard roughly 30 million fewer spoken words than children from more privileged families. Think about that, 30 million fewer words at the age of 3. Each word that is heard is a stimulant to the brain, is a piece of brain development. So when you have that much less stimulation, obviously the brain development is not going to be where it needs to be. So it's a huge disadvantage, and it often turns into a lifelong hindrance. And that's why we're here today, to face this challenge. We're kicking off a new vocabulary initiative that will help our children be better prepared for kindergarten and for all the follow-on studies that come after that, going up into their professional careers. Because if we don't start with a solid foundation, it's hard to get through the whole process. And then you're constantly behind and trying to catch up. And it's like, you're drowning. You're constantly coming up for air, and it's hard for you to develop the muscle that you need to develop to succeed. We are extremely blessed here in our city to have the national headquarters for the National Center for Families Learning here. Sharon Darling started it some time ago. We're blessed to have a national best practice right here in our city. So National Center for Family Learning is launching Say and Play with Words Louisville in partnership with Metro United Way's Ready for K Alliance. This is a dynamic partnership between Sharon and her team and Teresa Reno Weber and her team. If you're going to put some talent on an assignment, we're in good shape with these two ladies and their team here. So the goal of Say and Play with Words is to shrink this word gap that I just talked about and increase kindergarten readiness for at-risk children here in Jefferson County. Say and Play with Words has multiple components designed to provide parents and caregivers the support they need to help their children, and all these resources are free. We'll give more details in a moment, but one way to make a difference is I want to talk to the businesses in our community. Barbershops, beauty shops, doctor's offices, nail salons, anywhere that you can think of where parents and children come together. These are a simple place to put in what we're going to be calling a kid space. It's just a small area in your waiting room or other space that could alter the course of your customers' lives and the future of our city by helping us toward this goal of shrinking the word gap. Helping our youngest citizens in this simple way helps our whole city down the road. We're educating our future workforce so they can develop the skills to thrive in this rapidly changing global high-tech world that we're in right now. And that's what Safe and Play with Words Louisville is all about, getting each and every one of our kids in a position where they can succeed. And each and every one of our kids deserves that, but we all got to pitch in and make it happen. Your Metro government, if you're a citizen of Louisville, we're putting in an investment in the program through the current city budget, so I want to thank our Metro Council for their partnership in that. I also want to thank some of our other key partners. PNC is always there with us with youth development, so Mike, I want to thank you and your entire PNC team for your Grow Up Great program and continued efforts. Metro United Way's Ready for K Alliance is making significant differences throughout our community. The Lift of Life Foundation is also a partner in this effort, and of course the National Center for Families Learning as well. This is work that NCFL has focused on for nearly 30 years. And they've learned a lot over those 30 years. Sharon, one of the things I love about your organization, you're a learning organization. So what you've accumulated with evidence and knowledge and continuous improvement over the years has helped millions of kids. Thank you. Let's hear it for Sharon Darling right here. Come on. So Sharon pioneered family literacy right here in our city in the basement of one of our churches, as a matter of fact. And NCFL is a national leader in this work, creating the concept of parents and children together time, so packed time, multi-generational learning, and refining its model to meet the needs of our vulnerable families. And we are super proud, as I said, to have them headquartered right here in Louisville. Now Sharon and NCFL have expanded to work in 38 states across our country with more than 2 million families, helping parents and children learn so they can develop the skills to realize their full potential and break the cycle of poverty. So please welcome one of the champions in our country, a proud Louisvillian. Please welcome Sharon Darling.
Wow, thank you, Mayor Fischer. With that introduction, I think I'm just going to sit down. I think I can only go downhill from here. So we're just absolutely thrilled to be launching Say and Play with Words in Louisville today. It's really an exciting time because so many of us have come together to work on this for a very long time. And as you said, overcoming this word gap is going to be critical to our success. But what I like about it is that we're bringing all of these resources of literacy strategies, and we're bringing those together with vocabulary development, and all of those are wrapped into two-generational learning so that we see the power of an educational model that can last through generations. So it's not just about awareness. You know, we need to tell the story. We need to tell people more about what the statistics tell us, because that's frightening sometimes when we think about under-resourced children and the gap that they start school with. But this is about a lot more than that. This is going to be very actionable. We're going to make sure that we have something for everybody in this community to do to contribute to the success of building vocabulary and closing the word gap. So as the mayor said, we're here for almost 30 years, and sometimes we're the best kept secret here, I think. We sometimes are better known in New York or Phoenix or Los Angeles or 49 Native American reservations than we are right here in our hometown. But I can assure you that everything we're doing out there, everything we're learning about what people are doing right and wrong and what's being successful, we bring that right back to our home community of Louisville, Kentucky, because we want to be the greatest here in Louisville, because we can be. We have a wonderful mayor as a leader who really cares about education, and you heard how he cares about libraries, and he certainly has done great for the development of our community, and we're so thankful to have you, Mayor Fischer. So we want to make sure that every member, what we do at the National Center for Families Learning really is bringing together parents and children or adults and children, anybody that's a primary caregiver or influencer in a child's life. What can we do to help them get the skills and the knowledge so that every member of the family thrives? We often look at the achievement gap and we say, well, it's about poverty. It's children who are in under-resourced neighborhoods and all the things that happen as a result of that. But it's really not about poverty. The big influencer of how well a child's going to succeed in school is the educational attainment of the parent in the home. Yes, they may live in poverty situations, but they're not. There are no poor children in our country. There are children who live with poor adults, and the adults are poor because we haven't really spent the time and energy and investment to help them get the skills that they need in order to succeed in their lives and bring their children out of poverty. So Say and Play with Words focuses on vocabulary development for our youngest children, because vocabulary is so critically important to kindergarten readiness and the success that they're going to experience in school. So what is vocabulary development? That sounds like a pretty ominous thing, doesn't it, for preschoolers? Well, when we think about vocabulary development, a lot of us just think about what it was like. You get the flashcards. Here's a new word. You've got to memorize these words, or you've got a word that you have to spell it correctly and then define it and then use it in a sentence. And that is not what we're talking about with Say and Play. We're not talking about holding flashcards up in front of young children. We're talking about something that's very real and can be actionalized in real life. We're talking about developing the building blocks for later literacy development through talk and interaction between adults and young children. For example, changing a child's diaper or feeding a young baby. And that can be a time that's crucial in their development for literacy skills that they're going to need in the future. But, parents, a lot of caregivers think, why would I talk to this child while I'm changing their diaper? I mean, they can't understand a word I'm saying. They can't talk back to me. How silly is that? I would feel like a fool talking to this child when they can't understand me. But what we know is that the sounds, the tones, and the use of words are being soaked up by the brain as building blocks for the words the child will someday speak and read. Our youngest Louisvillians will develop 80% of their brains during the first 5 years of life. We must feed those brains with what we know they're going to need in order to be successful. And testing has shown that vocabulary is really the showstopper when it comes to reading comprehension. We can teach decoding skills, we call it in the education world, about how to sound out a word and some of those technical skills that children can learn in the first 3 grades. But what we found through a meta-analysis of all the research is that what happens by the time they get to 3rd grade and they start reading content and they need reading comprehension, the big showstopper is vocabulary. So we really, really have to pay attention to that. Talking to an infant causes the synapses in the language part of their brain to be stimulated for growth. So how will this important work be done so that we're sure that the early years can lead to later success? We're going to use a 3-pronged approach, and you heard a little bit about how businesses can be involved because that's very exciting, and that's one of the big pillars of this. But we're using a 3-pronged approach that will be interrelated and simultaneously as we launch a citywide network, including businesses, community members at large, teachers, child care staff, and most importantly, those primary caregivers or parents that are reaching into the homes and the environments where the children live when they're not in our institutions. Again, we will be working with 7 zip codes more intensely. This is a community-wide effort, but we're going to be working intensely in 7 zip codes in our Centers of Hope. A multimedia campaign is going to be launched. That's the first peg that will be simultaneously with the others that I'll mention. It'll be launched about the importance of developing early literacy skills and the way the entire community can be equipped to help. Research-based materials, ideas, and strategies will be available through the Say and Play website, and we'll launch a community messenger function to get this information deeply embedded in the community. So we're going to have ambassadors and champions, so it's not just going to be something that we hope people will see in this multimedia campaign. It's going to be very deep, with very deep roots, so we can get the message where it belongs. Free professional development workshops, training, technical assistance, and materials for child care staff, early childhood teachers, parents, and others who directly touch the lives of children. That's going to be widely disseminated throughout the community to ensure that these strategies become embedded in all of the programs or initiatives that touch young children's lives, and that most importantly, it can be carried into the homes where we need it to be. The third prong is reaching families directly where they go. Laundromats, grocery stores, libraries, churches, to equip them with actionable, simple ideas for vocabulary development. And we're not going to call this vocabulary development. We're not going to put up signs for parents and others, well, come in and learn about vocabulary development and how you can help your child. I don't think so. It doesn't sound like fun to me. We're going to be talking to them and how they can use this in real life terms, everyday activities like going to the grocery, driving in the car, riding in the bus, reading together at bedtime. So we're going to use these strategies in our intensive family literacy programs and family learning programs that we already have in this community, and that we will greatly expand so that we can take those who are most vulnerable in our family population in this city and help them realize the dreams for themselves and their children through this initiative. So what do we expect to see in Louisville as a result of all of this? Say and Play with words. We want measurable, we want quantitative results. That's what we're all about. We want to know the numbers, not just letters of support. We want to see what's actually happening. We expect to move the needle on kindergarten readiness, especially for the 50% of the JCPS kindergartners who show up identified as not ready for kindergarten. 50% show up as not ready for kindergarten. And we expect to see other outcomes that we measured in Say and Play in Detroit. We were fortunate to have PNC's backing to invest in Detroit and really develop this model that we're now bringing to Louisville. So in Detroit, 75,000 Detroit city residents connected to the resources of Say and Play with Words. And I believe in Louisville that we can double that number. I want to make 150,000 parents, teachers, and caregivers implementing these great literacy strategies for children to really make a difference. Think about that. If we have 150,000 people using new strategies to help children develop their language and literacy activities as preschoolers, just think what we could do. That's a tipping point. So let's do it. There are other results that we're excited about that we saw in Detroit. Children experienced significant vocabulary growth. They heard 200 more words a day as measured by a scientifically digital tool that we used in the Detroit programs. It was a gold standard research project, so we really can rely on the results of that. Social emotional relationships improved, but the most important thing to me that we saw and I'm excited about is what I think is the greatest finding. That is, parents reported the fun they were having in using these new strategies with their children and talking with their children and watching their babies coo with delight as they talk to them as infants. So those are the kinds of things. They were making up rhymes. They were telling us all the things that they were doing. That's what's going to make it stick, and that's what's going to help the parents encourage their children all throughout their academic career and make sure that they continue talking and asking questions and engaging their children. So all parents want what's best for their children, and they need to know what to do. And if they're doing something that they think will help and it's fun, that's as good as it gets. So to achieve these results and make lasting change, it's also incredibly important to NCFL that this work supports the very deep collaborations already in place so that it's truly owned by the community. It is a community effort. With that in mind, we've worked closely to ensure that Say and Play is aligned to the important work of the Ready for K Alliance and the mayor's overall cradle-to-career strategy that's so effective in this community. And a key partner in supporting this alignment is Metro United Way. Please welcome the outstanding president and CEO of Metro United Way, a real treasure, Teresa Reno-Weber.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and good morning, everybody. We are so excited at Metro United Way to be here today for the launch of Say and Play with Words, because we know that it is critical to the success of our youngest kids in our community, and it is part, as Sharon shared, of a broader collaboration and coordinated effort that has been going on in this community for the better part of 5 years now. We have been the backbone support of the Ready for K Alliance since 2015, but it is an evolution of the work that, as the mayor shared, we've been doing as a community in the Cradle to Career initiative. And it is hundreds of partners across our community coming together to make sure that every single child enters kindergarten day one ready for success. And we know, as you heard Sharon share, that today we still have a lot more work to do. Over the last 3 years, we've made big gains, some double-digit increases in the number and percent of children who are ready for success on day one in kindergarten. Because when we look at our priority neighborhoods, we see that while the average in our community is 50% of kids entering kindergarten ready to learn, in some neighborhoods, that's 30% or 32%. Over the last 3 years, we've been able to increase that through the Ready for K Alliance to make sure that we're getting closer to that 50%, and we're going to continue to build on that momentum with efforts like Say and Play with Words. Because what we recognize is there's multifacets to this work that needs to be done. Not only do we need to focus on making sure that there's really high, intense parent engagement, and not just parents, but grandparent engagement, because we know that some grandparents are the ones spending time with our youngest kids in our community. How do they have the tools that they need to be able to really engage and be their children's first and best teachers? But then we have to make sure that if they're not in the home with their parents, or when they're not in the home with their parents and grandparents, that they are in high quality childcare settings. And so the Ready for K Alliance and our partners at Lift Life Foundation and CENS and other foundations in our community have made sure that there is access for everyone to high quality kindergarten. And we have a lot of more work to do, but our excellence academies are making sure that kids are coming out of those preschool programs 2 times more likely to enter kindergarten ready for success than their peers. So we need to continue to invest in those resources and scale that effort. We also know that that transition point into kindergarten is extremely important. We can do all of this work in the 0 to 5 space, but if children aren't registered for kindergarten and they show up on day one and then are asked to leave because they weren't registered and the school wasn't ready for them, that is a traumatic first day experience that the Ready for K Alliance partners have been working to overcome and make sure that all kids and their families are prepared. And so we're super excited to know that we are going to now address this other element. Because when kids aren't ready for school, there's so many different reasons why. And one of them is the vocabulary piece. Do they have that vocabulary? Are they on par with their peers? And when kids coming out of poverty are 30 million words behind already, we know there's a lot that we can do. And we are so confident, based on the data and the evidence of what has worked in this space in other communities, that bringing Say and Play with Words to Louisville is going to get us to that closer vision of every child entering kindergarten ready for success.
Back in 2004, as a company, we decided our primary focus, if not or one of our primary focuses, if not the primary focus, was going to be early childhood education. And to your point, the Rogers organization, Sesame Street, some of the world-renowned leaders in early childhood education, we put together on a national advisory board to advise us on how to make the biggest impact in early childhood. If we were going to make this $100 million commitment with allowing employees 40 hours a year of paid time to do this type of thing, how do we really make an impact? One of the charter members of that advisory committee was our own Sharon Darling from Louisville, Kentucky. So the success, a big part of the success for what we have done here today. And I would like to also echo what everybody else said in saying we, as a result of this focus, we are always looking for great opportunities to primarily apply money, volunteerism, and advocacy toward good projects. This was one that we saw in Detroit. It came to the possibilities of Louisville. It really excited us. And 2 of the things that excited us the most were the fact that it was simple. To your point, Mayor, we're talking about you're waiting outside and you turn off after 10 seconds so that you're not polluting the air, and you're waiting to pick somebody up. That is Say and Play time with words. It's that simple. You heard the vocabulary gap. You heard the 30 million. It's almost like your Fitbit. It's like, how many words have I said today? And the second part is the collaboration. To your point, Sharon, Teresa, this community is at its best when we work together, and something we have seen over the 14 years we've been doing this is more and more of this type of collaboration. In some ways, it's, you think, a little disappointing. In other ways, I find it exciting. The more we are at the podium and hear first-time partnerships. There's part of you that says, wow, what took so long? But the really exciting part is we're doing it now. We're all working together. So thank you to all of our partners. Thank you for showing up. And to the media, thank you for spreading the word about how important and simple this step is in reducing that gap. Mayor, thank you for your leadership. Thank you, all my partners.
All right, to close this up, I'm going to ask Marlin Cole to come forward. As I mentioned, Marlin started as the first executive director of Cradle to Career in Louisville Promise about 3 or 4 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, okay. But she's on the job, and she's dedicated a good part of her life to making sure that everybody can succeed, and we start with education. So please welcome Marlin Cole.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I am just humbled and honored to be in this role and leading this very important effort. I think the key that we've heard all over today is collaboration, and this is just yet another collaboration, really pulling together all of the wonderful resources we already have in this community, but realigning ourselves around efforts to really help our children in what they need, really digging down into what are the issues, what are the barriers of our children in JCPS and around to help them be successful. So it's a very exciting time to be here, and I'm excited to hear of the work with our youngest residents that will really help form the work. And you'll be hearing more about Cradle to Career and Louisville Promise as we stand up this organization and pull together our resources, but happy to be collaborating with many of you in the audience, Teresa as well on our board, and just looking forward to the work. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Marlon. Under an ideal situation, we wouldn't have to do local efforts like this. We'd have all the resources we need from the federal government and from the state government. But as you can see, we are not waiting here in our city. We are attacking these issues and taking care of our own backyard. So a couple big takeaways from today. Awareness about brain development is what got to be top of mind. There's just so many people that don't realize these interactions with even prenatal and then all the way through up to age 5 or 6 when 80% of the brain is developed. Every time you talk to a child, every time you caress a child, every time you take a child outdoors and they feel a breeze across their face, the neurons in the brain are sparking. So how do we make sure that we're increasing each and every one of those experiences? So a lot of people don't realize that. So this is part of Say and Play, is increasing that level of awareness. Also understanding this is a multi-generational thing, right? So it could be the mom, it could be the grandma, grandpa, whomever it is, but they say, okay, I get this now. And so when they're spending that time interacting with that child, what before might have been thought about just kind of nonsense time, you are showing your love for your child or your grandchild or your niece or nephew by speaking to them and cooing to them and just spending all this time that we know naturally comes to us as people, but that's brain development time. Sitting a child in front of a screen does not count, okay? Yes, they are hearing words, but they're not having that human interaction that takes place when you look eyeball to eyeball and you've got those emotions and connections flowing back and forth between two human beings. So that's important to note as well. So I would just say the best way for us to show our love for our kids and our grandkids and anybody that we love is to get started with Say and Play. Okay, so it's a great announcement for our city today that's going to change the lives of so many of our children and affect our community in such a positive way. So if you would like to see what Say and Play activities look like, we have families in the back working on them with their children, so please check them out and please support Say and Play. Thanks, everybody.